Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. I'm your host, Brooke Mitchell, and today's topic is Discover Southern Australia on a Diverse Safari Down Under with NatHab Expedition Leader Matt Cornish. Thank you so much for being here today, Matt. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Brooke. Welcome to Australia South. Welcome to the discovery of the land down under. My name is Matt, and I've got this beautiful character. It'd be criminal to go too fast past it. This is the beautiful short-beaked echidna, one of our big targets when exploring southern Australia. It's a gorgeous little creature. So a little bit about myself. My name is Matt Cornish. I'm a expedition leader here in Australia. And as we say when we meet someone new, g'day and welcome. I'm an Australian naturalist and an experienced wildlife guide. And I'm also an avid nature photographer. The following presentation will have some images of some of our wildlife in Australia and particularly throughout Southern Australia. I must say though, some of these animals have been photographed over many, many years of exploring this great nation. So don't get a little bit excited about some of the opportunities that may face. And most of the images today have been captured whilst guiding for natural habitat adventures on this exact tour. For myself as well, I've got an experience of almost 20 years in wildlife education throughout Australia. I actually started off as a zookeeper at the age of 15 and moved all the way through multiple different careers, all whilst doing a side business of wildlife education in schools, teaching kids about the importance of wildlife and the natural world around us. My experience is a little bit diverse. I had a career of 7 years as a police officer before moving into a full-time role as a wildlife guide throughout Australia. But that's enough about me. Let's talk about the journey that awaits, hopefully, in Southern Australia. This Southern Australia Natural Habitat Adventures tour is an absolutely mind-blowing experience. And for me, we're visiting one of my favourite parts of the world. I live in far north Queensland, so I live on the opposing side of this great nation. However, I do love going down south and exploring the diversity of the habitats. Today, we'll be talking all about the Great Southern Australia Tour, which covers off on Kangaroo Island, the Great Ocean Road, and Tasmania. We'll be covering off a little bit about Australia. We'll be working our way through the itinerary, including accommodation and meals, talking about some of our wildlife targets that will present themselves throughout the slideshow, like this Australian sea lion who is giving me the stink eye. And we're going to be talking about the travel complexities of the trip, the weather. No one likes to talk about the weather, but we're going to talk about it today. The physical requirements that await. What should you pack? And at the very end, we'll have the opportunity for some questions and answers. Well, first of all, welcome. Welcome to Australia. This is a fantastic map that really shows you some of the topographic views of this country. I guess it's really important to note that we have the Great Dividing Range that travels down the east coast of Australia. The majority of our population lives on the east coast. So on the right-hand side, you'll notice down the bottom we've got Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, not Brisbane, Brisbane. And all the way up the top there, we've got Cairns, this coastal area on the east coast. We're sitting on the eastern side of the Great Dividing Range, and we have significant rainfall, very fertile soil. As such, the east coast is the heavily populated area. But on this trip of Southern Australia, we're going to go to Adelaide, which you'll notice in the state of South Australia down the bottom. We're going to move to Victoria and around where it says Geelong. And then we're going to fly down to Tasmania and explore the island state. This is a map that most people probably have never seen before, and it looks a little bit confusing. There's a lot of unusual shapes and colors, and there's a lot going on. This is actually a map of the indigenous nations, the Aboriginal nations that really owned and dominated the Australian landscape prior to European arrival. As you can see, it's a bit of a mosaic of nations, and really they were bordered by different landscapes, different seasonality, the availability of food, and obviously the availability of shelter. And a lot of these nations would be moving throughout the landscape. Quite small nations around very, very fertile areas, and quite broad nations in areas that are more challenging to live. Indigenous people have lived in Australia for roughly around 70,000 years. and they manage this landscape incredibly well. So some people may have never come to Australia and they're not too sure how big it is. Well, this is to scale. We've placed Australia over the US, and as you can see straight away, it's pretty big. In comparison to the United States, it's almost the same size. So I think this is something we need to be mindful of when we do travel through Australia, is a broad, large nation. And as such, the travel distances and times can be quite significant. So we've tried to make sure our travel arrangements are suitable and comfortable, but we do need to be mindful that it is a massive country. And there's a reason we have a few different tours in Australia with natural habitat adventures. Now, I know what everyone's thinking. What are we going to eat when we go over there? That's probably the first and most important question. Well, Australian cuisine is interesting. These days in Australia, we pride ourselves on being a multicultural country. So, yes, we'll have the opportunity to eat some local food and try some local delicacies. But I must tell you, the two things on your screen right now, Vegemite and Tim Tams, are two things you're going to want to try. One of them you probably won't enjoy, but it's all part of the experience. And the other one you'll be looking up how to purchase when you get home. You'll have to figure that out when you get there. But most certainly, these are two food items that are a staple for Australians and something that we encourage our guests to give a try when you arrive. So let's dive into the trip. First of all, we're going to be talking about part one of the journey. This is a three-part journey throughout Southern Australia. Part one being Adelaide and the incorporation of Kangaroo Island. You can see the gorgeous landscape behind us. This is a spot that you'll be able to witness as well and observe. We've got this gorgeous lighthouse on the left-hand side, the beautiful ocean. This is at Kangaroo Island. And this was simply taken on a mobile phone. So the landscapes there are not saturated or expanded. It's just pure beauty right in front of your eyes. And we've got this cute little character as well. We'll be searching for the Tamar wallaby. We'll be spending 4 nights and 4 days throughout Adelaide and Kangaroo Island. The way the journey will begin is we will essentially start the trip in Adelaide, which is the capital of South Australia, and then we'll be making a chartered flight over to Kangaroo Island. We'll be exploring the natural world down there. This is a little bit of a closer map of Kangaroo Island, and as you can see, there's just things everywhere. Well, it is quite a large island. You're probably looking around about 100 miles from the east to the west, and we'll be exploring all of it over 3 full days on the island. We'll be basing ourselves up the northern part around the Cygnet River area, and we'll be breaking the island up into multiple days for multiple activities. I guess the thing to remember here is it is a gorgeous natural habitat. There's a lot of wildlife. So we've tried to really organize the trip so we are experiencing the wildlife, but also enjoying the natural surrounds of the landscapes. You might notice in the middle here, we've got a seafood barbecue. We'll be doing some meals in the field. We try to incorporate as many meals as we can in the outdoors while we're on Kangaroo Island. It's a great way to start the trip and immerse yourself in the Australian countryside. And you never know, you could be hanging out with some wildlife at the same time. One of the most exciting features, one of the most exciting activities, in fact, on Kangaroo Island is visiting the Seal Bay National Park, the Australian sea lion. He's pretty much that is possibly what your expedition leader will look like early in the hours. But you know what? They do come to life, and sometimes we see some great activity on that island, or sometimes we just get to experience these vulnerable species doing their best thing. Whilst we are on the island, you can see some of the gorgeous landscape already. These are some of the guests that we took out last season, and they're actually receiving a presentation on the short-beaked echidna, one of our endemic animals in Australia. You can see one of our presenters here, Mike, is holding up an image of what we call a puggle. A puggle. It's probably a word you've never heard before, and we're going to leave it that way. I think that might be something you can be a little bit excited to hear about, all about puggles. All you have to do is look at the facial expressions of all our guests here. Even they are a little bit, what on earth is a puggle? We get some amazing ecology talks throughout the island, guys, and we get to sit down in the field and learn some of our local experts. It's a glorious time. And of course, the moment you've been waiting for, yes, this will be the place we'll be searching for koalas. Now, koalas are obviously one of the most exciting animals to see whilst exploring Australia. They're reasonably common on the island. I'm not going to dive too much into the story of koalas, but unfortunately they were hunted early in the early days for their fur, and as such, a lot of the animals were relocated to different islands throughout Australia for conservation value. And these days, the on Kangaroo Island, the koalas are doing quite well. Maybe we should call it Koala Island. Of course, there's always an opportunity for a group photo, and as you can see, the landscape is just to die for. In fact, we probably shouldn't have stood in front of that. I think we might have ruined the background. Now, this right here is just an absolutely gorgeous sunset and is actually the location where we're going to be staying. So we stay at this beautiful place called Wanderer's Rest or the River Suites. And we're based on the gorgeous American river in the background. And this little patio, veranda style you see on the left-hand side is actually our restaurant. And this is our afternoon views. We'll be looking out over the river for this gorgeous coloration. And you can see we've got a beautiful swimming pool. Does get a little bit chilly, but you can venture in if you like, and our rooms are located just underneath. When it comes to choosing our accommodation, I think it's really important to remember that we choose the location first and then the most comfortable and suitable accommodation after that. So, as such, Kangaroo Island is obviously the place we like to explore. We've tried to find a central location so we have the best opportunity to explore with the least amount of travel time. We found River Suites, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's owned and operated actually by a couple, Nico and Dia. Dia is our host, and Nico is a chef. And he will be cooking dinner for us throughout the trip. And he puts together an amazing collection of local foods, including seafood and some other different meats found in Australia. We obviously caters for all sorts of different dietary requirements. So if you do have any dietary requirements, by all means, place it into your pre-departure forms, and everything will be accounted for and customized for your needs. But as the sun goes down, it is time for us to venture off to our next part of the journey. Of course, we can stop for a sneaky little selfie though. This is our seafood barbecue. Part two, the Great Ocean Road. Arguably the most famous road in Australia. We'll be spending 2.5 days here and 2 nights. You'll notice there's a bit of a mixed habitat straight away. We've got these gorgeous limestone cliff faces that meet with the Great Southern Ocean, and we've also got this rainforest patch here as well. So this will be the first opportunity for you to be introduced to a temperate rainforest. So a cool rainforest that can be found throughout Victoria and even down in Tasmania. Now, again, this is a close-up view of where we're going to be exploring on the Great Ocean Road. There's no need to be too held up by this, but the way this works is we're going to be taking a private flight directly from Kangaroo Island into a small town called Warrnambool, which you can see on the left-hand side of the screen. By using chartered private flights, we're able to customize the flight time of when we depart and when we arrive. And obviously, we're able to find the direct route and obviously arrive at the location that prefers us most. If we arrive at Warrnambool, which we do, we go to this gorgeous area called Tower Hill Wildlife Reserve. Now, this is a great location for us to explore and also do an Indigenous experience. So we can meet with some Indigenous locals, some Aboriginal locals of the area, and have an introduction into their culture, which is obviously a vital part and a rich part of our history in Australia. The way we do the Great Ocean Road is we explore from the western part down the coastline to the east. We've broken up over 2 nights because this is a 2-day journey. We start on the west coast, western side of the coastline, and we travel through the east, staying at 2 different accommodations along the way, exploring gorgeous landscapes and seeing amazing wildlife. And maybe you might see one of our locals here hiding and feeding in the grass, the amazing swamp wallaby. And yes, he's smiling at the camera. Our wildlife in Australia will do that from time to time. But stop and take a selfie by all means. The gorgeous coastline here is the most photogenic area that you could possibly imagine. The Great Ocean Road is littered with photo opportunities. Some of our amazing guests from last season enjoyed it too. Now, I must warn you, in Australia, we do have emus. If you don't know what an emu is, this is it. He's one of our largest birds, belongs to the ratite family, in fact. So he's a relative of the ostrich. And sometimes they get a little bit cheeky, and sometimes when we're enjoying a picnic lunch, in Tower Hill Wildlife Reserve, the old picnic sneaking emu may sneak up and say good day. So we'll be learning all about a huge variety of animals, including this native Australian one, and he is quite the character, let me tell you. Throughout the journey, as I said, we'll be exploring this gorgeous coastline, but we'll even be enjoying an activity in a place called Wildlife Wonders. Now, this is a conservation property that is really protecting its native animals from introduced species. We need to be mindful in Australia. With early European arrival, we did have an influx of introduced species, pest species as well. So with this introduction of these animals, we've seen huge change throughout the environment and obviously at the detriment to our native animals and landscapes. By visiting Wildlife Wonders, and I've kept this photo reasonably discreet, I don't want to give away too much. In Wildlife Wonders, we talk about the value of having a fenced off predator proof and pest proof fence. And we can restore an area into its natural environment without the rabbits, without cats and other pest species that are causing terrible, terrible issues to the native environment. Our accommodation for the first night will be the gorgeous Daisy Hill. As you can see, some nice little cabins, and there is a beautiful view, some nice open lawns here. I must let you know throughout the trip, obviously it is 2 weeks, we're going through a diverse number of habitats. Near the end of this talk, I'll be talking about luggage, and I'll also be talking about the availability of laundry. This will be one of our laundry stops, but again, I'll rehash near the end of the talk. As we continue our journey down the Great Ocean Road, we'll be heading to a place called Chris's at Beacon Point. Now, this is the restaurant that we will be exploring and enjoying. Obviously, amazing food, but look at that view. I think this is probably one of the best views you can get in Australia. Our accommodation has similar views, and it's a great time for us to rest and recoup, spend a little bit of time just surrounding the Australian bushland with beautiful views as we come up towards the halfway mark of the trip. I must tell you, and this is a sneaky little surprise, sometimes you can see a koala sitting in these trees while you're enjoying your meal. So if that doesn't get you excited for Southern Australia, I don't know what will. But with that, our koala, our amazing food and landscapes, it's time to continue on to the third part of the three-part extravaganza of Southern Australia. This is Tasmania. Tasmania is a state in itself in Australia. It is an island that is separated from the mainland of Australia. Due to this, we do have a significant amount of endemic species in Tasmania from the mainland. And of course, we have species that are found on the mainland as well, which are endemic to Australia. And I've included this cute little fella, and he will be melting hearts left, right, and centre, the bare-nosed wombat. Now, if you've never heard of a wombat, I'll tell you right now, he is an absolutely terrific animal, and something that you will have to get used to because they're reasonably frequent in certain areas. But let's dive into it, guys. Tasmania, 4.5 days and 5 nights, exploring absolutely pristine wilderness. See a gorgeous waterfall in the background here too. This is the great state of Tasmania, one of my absolute treasures when I travel, one of my favourite locations. Again, we'll be taking a private chartered flight. We'll be flying from Victoria in an airport called Geelong. We'll be flying directly over a body of water called the Bass Strait. We'll be arriving at the northern part of Tasmania. Again, the use of private chartered flights allows us to customize our journey and have us land in an area which you would not usually be able to take a commercial flight. We'll be arriving at the top end of the state, and we're making our way straight to Cradle Mountain. Yeah, we might, if time permits, you never know, we might have a sneaky stop off and look for maybe a platypus or two, but I won't go into that. I'll keep that as a little bit of a surprise. We'll be heading to the very, very famous Cradle Mountain National Park, a wildlife mecca and a place of just absolute pristine beauty. When we're in Tasmania, it's probably best you get used to these furry little friends, the Bennett's wallabies. Tasmania, located in the southern part of Australia, does get very, very cold. So think about it. It's the opposite to the states. Our southern states do get quite cold. So in Tasmania, the climate is very, very, let's say, reliably unreliable. you can have 4 seasons in one day. And the wildlife is adapted to that. So they've got very, very thick fur and they enjoy living in the undergrowth. And hopefully you'll have the opportunity of meeting this furry little friend, the Bennett's wallaby, one of our cute little residents. Now, this is the marvelous Cradle Mountain in all of its beauty. An area, a landscape that has been shaped through glaciation events and is a geologist's heaven, really. It's a dream come true for anyone who loves their rocky landscapes. We've got the gorgeous Dove Lake here as well, and we've got some amazing alpine country that we can explore. And this is a great opportunity when we are at Cradle Mountain to do some wilderness adventures and walks. There's wildlife, there's landscapes, and there's some amazing hiking opportunities as well. Don't be too concerned about the hiking, though. We will be talking about physical requirements towards the end of the webinar. Again, we try to eat as many meals as we can in the field. Don't be too concerned about the looks on our guest faces here. This is the pure excitement they had when we described some of the walks that were available to them. So on this particular day, we had breakfast in a wooden cabin overlooking Cradle Mountain and preparing for half a day of walking and exploring the gorgeous Cradle Mountain National Park. As I said earlier, we try to incorporate as many meals as we can into the field to allow us to have that immersive experience. It is an absolute treasure. But with our bacon and eggs in our stomach, it's time to take part in our venture. If you have a look to the left, there's a tiny little building up there on the mountainside. That's where the last photo was. We were in that cabin having breakfast, looking over a valley. But after breakfast, we've sustained ourselves full of food. It's time to take off. It's beautiful boardwalks are littered throughout the national park, but they're very, very narrow and they're actually off the ground. The idea being is they're as less intrusive on the environment as possible. So we try to obviously, with the national parks, they try to ensure that there's a little footprint on the environment as possible. The Tasmanian government does a fantastic job when it comes to preserving and conserving our national parks in the state. We enjoy this beautiful boardwalk, walking along through this countryside, and the landscape will absolutely blow you away. And this would be a perfect opportunity to keep our eyes peeled for wombats throughout. Oh, there's one straight away, sitting down nice and low, looking at the camera. G'day, mate. Yes, your expedition leader will talk to animals. That's what happens. Cute little fella. After a day of hiking, obviously it's nice to have a little bit of R&R, a little bit of rest and relaxation and soak up the gorgeous scenery. Now, I must tell you, Cradle Mountain, uh, it does have this beautiful lodge. It's just where we will be staying. This is the reception area and this is the restaurant. So we do have a nice fireplace, comfortable dining, amazing food, but this is a location where you can have 4 seasons in one day. Currently, right now, there is huge blizzards going through Tasmania. There is a huge amount of snow, and everyone is just bunkering down. But in a couple of months, that snow will clear out nicely, and it should have some cold spells, and there is a possibility of a little bit of snow. But generally speaking, in Cradle Mountain, the temperatures are cool to comfortable, but the rain, well, we have all 4 seasons in one day. While we are in Cradle Mountain, it's great to learn and visit some of our conservationists and ecologists in the local area. We take a visit to a place called Devils at Cradle. Now, Devils at Cradle is a brilliant conservation organisation, and they're focusing on the recovery of Tasmanian devils. So everyone's heard of Tasmanian devils, probably more so from the Looney Tunes, but if you have a look at the image on the left, that is a live Tasmanian devil, Joey. Now, these animals they're very, very cute, but they have a fascinating lifestyle and unfortunately a very, very poor history with early European arrival. So we're going to dive into that topic obviously quite deeply when we do visit Cradle Mountain, but I will let you know that this day at Devils at Cradle is a fantastic day and a very empowering day. A lot of our guests feel very rewarded to be able to go and support these conservationists. When we do meet conservationists in the field or at their premise, we obviously provide a donation on your behalf to these initiatives. So we're traveling, uh, we're learning about conservation, we're learning about the wildlife and the impacts facing our wildlife, and thankfully we're also giving back. Just our visitation alone is a substantial contribution to these organisations. And obviously, that then transpires into work on the ground. You're probably wondering what that spotted little character here is on the right. Well, he's a quoll species. I'm not going to dive too much into that, but the quoll is, again, a native Australian animal, but he's a carnivorous marsupial, just like our Tasmanian devil here. So he's a meat-eating, cute little marsupial. But again, we'll be diving deep into that and talking about the conservation value of these animals and the threats that are facing them in the wild. Now, of course, Tasmania, it's the place of landscapes and wildlife, and we'll be visiting some amazing national parks along the way, including Mount Field National Park, where we visit and explore some beautiful temperate rainforests. There's a waterfall in every corner, and obviously there's green as far as the eye can see. Visiting the national parks, we see a diversity in landscapes throughout Tasmania. Tasmania has an extremely rugged interior. As such, the east coast of Tasmania and the west coast are vastly different. The rainfall amount is just massively different. And obviously, if the wind is really blowing from the south, you can get Arctic winds, so very, very cold. Now, due to the different structures of the landscape, the national parks can vary a lot. We're going to be experiencing a few different national parks along the way, and they'll feel like completely different countries, not to mention just national parks. But this one right here, the very famous Mount Field National Park, where you have to keep your eye open for our short-beaked echidna. And believe it or not, this one was captured by our guests out in a field in national park. So we do need to keep our eyes out absolutely everywhere because you never know when a wildlife's going to turn up. Of course, this is a great opportunity as well. We are, roughly about 10 days into the trip. Great opportunity for our lovely couples in the group or our solo travelers to have a moment of mindfulness, to separate away from other travelers, to open up their senses, to smell the rainforest, to listen to the sounds of the rainforest, the beautiful bird life, calling in the canopies, grunching around in the leaf litter. It's a great opportunity to be at one with nature. So we do encourage moments of mindfulness throughout the trip where you can broaden your senses and experience the natural world in the most amazing way possible. While we are exploring Mount Field and we've moved through the central plateau of Tasmania, we're travelling south along the way through the island state, and we're making our way down towards Hobart, which is where we would conclude our journey. But along the way, we do stay in some amazing, let's call it luxury tented lodges. This is the Truffle Lodge. This is a beautiful private property we have completely to ourselves. We obviously stay in these beautiful little safari style tents that you can see on the screen. And yes, we are close to the river. This is the mighty Derwent River. And an opportunity for our guests to explore the river and see some of the wildlife as well, which is by kayak and does include the platypus. We do have an activity which does involve kayaking along the Derwent River. Now, this is an activity where we can get down onto the water and we call it paddling with the platypus. Nothing to be too concerned about with physical requirements. It's not whitewater rafting by any means. In fact, I would even say this image was probably the roughest day I've ever seen. Generally, it's quite comfortable and smooth, but again, we'll talk about the physical requirements later, and we'll go into greater detail with your expedition leader on the journey as well. But we do need to keep our eye out for our monotremes, the Australian, or some people say the duck-billed platypus. It's the only platypus species around. They're found throughout the east coast of Australia, and Tasmania is one of the best places to find them. I must tell you, though, they are highly elusive. It's a very, very difficult animal to find. I've been photographing wildlife now for probably about 10 years, and this is one of the best images I could take. I spent a lot of time with this species photographing them, so to get them on the surface in a beautiful area can be very challenging. But your expedition leader will be looking for them with his eagle or her eagle eye, and hopefully you can get your eyes onto one of these amazing native animals. Don't be too surprised though, they're not the size of a beaver like you think. They're a fair bit smaller. As we continue our journey through central Tasmania, we've come down towards Hobart. And this is a view of Hobart. You can see Hobart's this beautiful city down by the water, down nice and low. But you're probably wondering where I am when I took the image. Well, I'm up on Mount Wellington, or the indigenous name Kunani. And this is an amazing dolerite structure that is a little bit higher in altitude and gives us a gorgeous vantage point out over the Tasmanian capital city. Exploring Hobart is an amazing opportunity, and obviously the views, the landscapes, again, will continue to surprise you along the way. I've deliberately incorporated this image because I didn't want to show you what the guests are looking at, just the reactions of the guests. And as you can see, one of our guests here is having an absolute blast. This image was taken at Bonorong Wildlife Sanctuary. Bonorong Wildlife Sanctuary is a conservation property that was established in Hobart, and it was originally designed as a zoo, and now it's designed more of as a rehabilitation centre, a rescue and rehabilitation centre. We'll have a private experience of Bonorong Wildlife Sanctuary. We'll be meeting some of the workers there, some of the zookeepers, some of the vets, maybe even some of the owners of the property as well. And they talk about their story and why they decided to take over a zoo and turn it into a conservation property. This would be a great opportunity to meet up close and personal some of our native Australian animals as well. And I can guarantee you're going to have a look on your face similar to that. It is an experience that many people value for a long, long time. Now, it's time to talk about travel. And as you can see, we've got the fundamentals here. We've got an aeroplane, that's pretty important. We've got a packet of Tim Tams on the dashboard to keep our pilot enthusiastic and awake. We obviously try to incorporate private flights as much as we can. So we have a private flight from Adelaide to Kangaroo Island. We have a private flight from Kangaroo Island to Victoria, a private flight from Victoria to Tasmania. So by doing so, as I said, we're increasing flexibility for obviously the times in which we can travel and the locations we can travel to and from. When we are traveling along, though, we will be taking private vehicles as well. You can see we've got a small insert here of one of the vehicles looking at a map. When we are traveling along, we use two minibus style vehicles. So every location we go to, there's going to be two minibus style vehicles. We try to create enough space that every traveler should have roughly 2 seats each. The idea being is that you are comfortable in the car and you also have room for your day bag with you. So we try to make sure when we do travel through the vehicle, by vehicle, we do have a comfortable experience along the way. We try and make sure there's plenty of window seats for everyone as well, so no one misses out on the action. As you can see on this slide, airport transfers are included pre and post trip for those that are arriving for the trip into Adelaide or leaving straight after the trip in Hobart. Obviously, arrangements can be made for those that are choosing to travel on or arrive and depart earlier or later in the trip as well. As I mentioned, we have 3 private chartered flights throughout the journey and 2 minibus style vehicles and the pre-tour per tour rather for the group in each location, as I mentioned. Always plenty of room in the vehicles for your day bags and camera gear. But now I've told you there's plenty of room, there is luggage restrictions in place, unfortunately. We will be talking about the luggage restrictions a little bit later on and what's important to back. I guess it's a little bit of a catch-22. We've got these amazing chartered flights, but by using small charter flights, we do have restrictions on your luggage. And you can find those details in your pre-departure forms. The weather, the topic that we don't like to talk about. As you can see, we've got a rainy old day here, but the guests have got smiles on their face, and that's what's important. And we've also got this beautiful sunny day on the Great Ocean Road as well. At different parts of the journey, we really can, it doesn't matter in the time of year, we really can have all 4 seasons in every location. It is quite mind-blowing, this part of the world. Now, our seasonality is very, very different to the Northern Hemisphere, obviously. When we do travel throughout the Australian travel season, we're looking at the spring, summer, and autumn months. In saying that, even though we are experiencing it in the seasonality of summer, all of these images are taken at Cradle Mountain National Park within a couple of months of each other. So last year I did 6 trips to Cradle Mountain, and I think I had every one of the 4 seasons over the 6 different trips. You can see we've got a bright sunny day with cloudy cover and Cradle Mountain in the background on the left. Gorgeous clear day with Cradle Mountain in the background in the middle. And I must say, this is a very, very rare occurrence, okay? To see Cradle Mountain fully exposed without clouds, I've only seen it twice in my life, and I've been to Cradle Mountain 10 times. So it's a rarity, but an amazing opportunity if we do get it. And on the right-hand side, it's a rainy old foggy day, but still a great opportunity to explore the national parks. I find that if the weather is not performing and it is rainy and drizzly, the wildlife is more active. So it doesn't matter what the weather's doing. Generally, there's a big win for our guests along the way. And still, we've got smiles all over our faces, even though some of us have got foggy glasses and raincoats. There's smiles all around, which is good to see. While we are exploring Tasmania, obviously some people are mindful of the physical requirements. Now, we do have a few different walks available to us, but a lot of things are optional. I mean, every activity is optional. Even our chartered flights are optional. Probably not really, but you get what I mean. Every single thing that we do on the trip is optional, and we try to make sure that everyone who has maybe limited physical requirements or maybe exceeds any physical requirements has the opportunity to enjoy the space as best as possible. Being in a natural environment in gorgeous national parks, we do try to make sure that our guests have the opportunity to explore and intimately explore our national parks. But we do encourage our guests to have the ability to comfortably walk 2 miles. Now, if you are a little bit hesitant on this, we would obviously find ways that we can work around it. But to truly explore and experience the trip in its fullest, comfortably walking 2 miles is important. Please forget my little typo there, my apologies. And there is a couple of stairs and uneven terrain. When we are entering into these wilderness areas, the walks can be a little bit rugged. But you can just see in the background, we've got a little bit of dirt there and some stairs in the background, a little bit of a elevated surface as well. This can occur throughout the trip, so we do need to be mindful of that. We are regularly in and out of the vehicles as well. So we do need to be mindful that we're constantly up and down. And when we are traveling, we can sometimes be seated in the vehicles for maybe even up to a couple of hours at a time for a big travel day, that is. We try to regularly stop as much as we can for wildlife, for walks, and for obviously bathroom stops along the way. But we do need to be mindful you'll be regularly up and down out of the vehicles throughout as we explore the different stops. For those that have ventured with Natural Habitat Adventures, and they're probably looking for something a little bit more active or maybe going outside of the included walks. We do have the option of longer walks along the way. Particularly in Cradle Mountain National Park, we try to enjoy some opportunities where people can walk off on their own around the environment, but obviously done in a safe area. And there's obviously the option of exploring a little bit more of a longer distance and diving a little bit deeper into these wild areas. Now, as for the physical requirement of kayaking that a lot of people might be thinking about, it is considered to be easy for most guests to take part. When I have run these tours last season, most guests took part in their kayaking. Most people were comfortable with it, and it is quite an easy, comfortable experience. It is very, very leisurely, shall we say. But the details on the requirements will be outlined during the trip with your expedition leader, who will go into the nuts and bolts, as we say, of the requirements of kayaking. But please keep in mind, don't be too stressed about it. It is a very, very comfortable experience, and we would encourage all guests to partake in this if obviously they're suitable. What should we pack? This is the question we get all the time. So, Matt, we've got so much seasonality, we've got so many places, it's such a big journey. We're going to the other side of the world, we're going on all these walks, we're experiencing all these natural areas. What do we pack? Well, I'll tell you right now, that bag is not coming with us. Obviously that might be a little bit of overkill. So we do encourage guests obviously to have one checked bag and one carry bag. So your checked bag would be a soft-sided luggage bag. This obviously assists us with storage on our aeroplanes, on our private chartered flights, and obviously it's important when we're constantly moving them in and out of the vehicles. We need to be able to fit them into tight spaces sometimes on the airplane. So soft-sided is required. So one checked bag with all of your gear and one carry bag. This might be a day bag that you can keep your personal items in. It might be a camera bag that you want to keep all your camera gear in as well. The carry-on bag will be with you in person, but the checked bag will be either in the vehicle or sometimes it will be dropped off at our accommodation during the day. All this will be communicated to you throughout. Our expedition leaders will keep you up to date with all the logistical management throughout. But just be mindful, guys, one checked bag, soft-sided luggage, and one carry-on. But we encourage everyone, obviously, to carefully go through the packing list in your pre-departure documents. It has an outline of what's required. But for me, I think cold weather gear is vital. You don't know when it could get cold. Realistically, we could be looking at temperatures as low as 40 degrees Fahrenheit and as high as 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can see a huge fluctuation in temperatures there. As such, it is quite difficult to pack, I must admit, but obviously we'd encourage cold weather gear, long sleeve shirts, suitable hiking boots, and rain pants and binoculars. I would say they are probably some of the more fundamental items to bring along. Rain pants can double down. Yes, if it's a rainy day, it'll protect you well, but also the rain pants are generally used by those that undertake the kayaking as well. So it can be a little bit chilly in the water when we are kayaking, and that can give you nice coverage when you're sitting into the kayak. So the rain pants are not only for when it's raining, but for kayaking as well. I think suitable hiking boots, we try to keep them lightweight hiking boots as best as possible because of the luggage restrictions. But certainly hiking boots, something for really all terrains would be great. Don't be too worried about having to bring clothes to dress up too much for any formal occasions. Sometimes when we rock up at certain areas, maybe for a meal, we arrive at a restaurant, we all look like we're naturalists in the field, and there's nothing to be concerned about packing clothes for a smart occasion or anything like that. Generally, we just consider our outdoor gear and our clothing that we would wear when we're exploring the national parks. We can use them for multiple things. When it comes to packing, I would also let you know that we do have laundry facilities along the way, but they are a little bit restricted. We can do laundry in Adelaide when you first arrive. If you do arrive a few days beforehand, you can do your laundry in Adelaide. You can just talk to the hotel servers, obviously at the Mayfair Hotel where we stay. They can do it there. When we arrive at Kangaroo Island, we do have facilities that we encourage not everyone to do if you don't have to. It's just there if we do need it. But as soon as we arrive in Victoria, our first stop at Daisy Hill does have laundry facilities available to us. So generally on a tour, people will pack for Adelaide Kangaroo Island. As soon as we get to Victoria, they've got the opportunity to drop their bags, do their laundry, and freshen up. So that's a great opportunity. As we continue through the Great Ocean Road, when we arrive at Cradle Mountain in Tasmania, there's another opportunity to do your laundry as well. So there's really strategically two big locations along the way, one third of the way and two-thirds of the way through the trip where people can stop, do their laundry, clean up their gear, and get ready to go again. And obviously, when we arrive at Hobart, there'll be laundry facilities with our hotel for our last night's stay as well. Another thing I would like to add here that's not really relevant to the packing is the meals. When we travel, we obviously try to have the best meals possible. When we are traveling along, we don't want to spend too much time sitting down, looking at the menu, ordering our food, waiting for our food, because this is time that we could be in a field searching for wombats and platypus and echidnas and koalas and kangaroos and wallabies and sea lions and you name it. So what we do is we do a lot of pre-ordering. So I must let you know, so you got a bit of a heads up, when you are with your expedition leader in the field, menus will be coming out during drive time or maybe time when we're already sitting down for another meal, and we will hand out the menu, take a pre-order, and pass that on to the restaurant. The idea being is that when we do arrive at our destinations, the meals are ready to go, eat our meal, and continue on and spend more time in the field enjoying, obviously, the naturalistic surrounds of Southern Australia. So keep that in mind, guys. We try to manage our meal ordering so we spend as much time in the field. Everything is designed with this tour to maximize our time in the field. The travel arrangements, the meal arrangements, the accommodation arrangements, everything is designed so you spend the most time in the field as possible while you're exploring our great nation. We can't wait to show you around in our backyard, so we look forward to seeing you soon. But I must tell you, before I put it to any questions, our wildlife is very, very hard to find at sometimes. Our expedition leaders are highly qualified, highly experienced, and they do work hard to make sure that they can find a wildlife for you. There's a lot of wildlife targets throughout that you've seen images throughout the presentation, but sometimes our animals are hard to find. So we do have to work together as a team. I encourage everyone to bring binoculars because we always have our eyes out. And just for those that are traveling to Southern Australia, I've got a little bit of a challenge for you to start off. Can you spot the animal in this presentation slide right now? I know you're a little bit surprised, but there is actually an animal in this image. I'll give you a clue. He's hiding behind that bush right there. I'm not sure if you can see him or not. But as you can see, some of our wildlife does try to hide from us, but your eagle-eyed expedition leaders will be working hard to make sure of it. But without any further ado, guys, does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask?
Wow, Matt, that was incredible. I am so excited for everybody already booked on this trip. And if anybody's thinking about joining, I would love to hop on a plane right now and come join. We do have lots of questions here, and everybody, we'll take questions for about the next 10, 11 minutes. So please, in your GoToWebinar control panel, put those in there, and we'll see how many we can get through. I do have some themes coming up, Matt, that I would like to ask you about. First, let's talk about camera gear. Could you maybe talk about some
Mm,
lens length recommendations that
mm.
people should consider bringing?
Yeah, most certainly. Camera gear is a vital part of traveling. For me, when I pack my luggage for the trip, I've got my camera bag is the first thing I pack, and I weigh it, and I make sure that whatever's left over I can use for the rest of my clothes. So it is the most vital part of traveling. It is really a challenging question. It really depends on what people are looking to photograph, because there's so much variety of photographic opportunities throughout the trip. If you're looking for wildlife, you probably want to make sure that you've got a telephoto lens, and you want to make sure that you increase the amount of opportunity for that camera. So to give you an example, I wouldn't bring a 400 mil prime lens. 400 millimeters is great, but maybe a 100 to 400, if you have it available, might be better. That way you've got animals that might be a little bit closer and animals that are far away. Most certainly, when I travel, I try to have something around the 400 millimeter mark in lens depth, and 70 to 200 also might be something to consider. So for the wildlife, anywhere between 70 to 200 and 100 to 400 mil lenses would be great. But if you're looking at the landscapes as well, potentially a wide angle might be suitable. If you can have a bit of a mid-range lens that pushes out to wide, and also something that goes to telephoto, that would be suitable. I would say some people travel with two bodies and two different lenses. I don't think that's a wise way of traveling with the space that we've got. Make sure you have one body and maybe two lenses if you can travel with that. But most certainly, some of the wildlife we'll be photographing, koalas, wombats, platypus, for instance, like that. You're probably looking around about that 200 to 400 mark. So 70 to 200 would be great for certain animals, but yeah, pushing out towards 400 would be suitable for other animals as well. If you're into bird photography, for instance, you'd be looking at that 400 mil plus. I hope that answers that question. It's a it's a tough one. It really is, especially with luggage restrictions.
Absolutely. And speaking of luggage restrictions and camera gear, what about tripods? What do you feel about those in this trip?
Mm, mm. Again, it's a tough one. A lot of travelers do travel with a tripod, but it's a lightweight tripod. So maybe a carbon fiber tripod, and making sure it is small and compact, but expandable as well. For the use of a tripod, you're probably looking at landscape opportunities, maybe places like Cape Willoughby, where we've got that gorgeous lighthouse at the start of the presentation on Kangaroo Island, but also the 12 Apostles, which is some of the coastal roads along the Great Ocean Road. That might be a tripod moment. For me, I photograph the entire trip consistently, and I've never taken a tripod with me. But it really, again, it depends what you're interested in. I don't think you'll need a tripod for our wildlife, though. I your expedition leaders can assist you with the use of your camera gear, but you would increase your ISO, obviously compensate your shutter speeds so you can capture the animal sharp without the use of a tripod. But for your landscapes, potentially, I would say if it's small and lightweight and you would like to take landscape photography, by all means, but I wouldn't be stressing about it too much.
Fantastic. And what about any astrophotography or chance for southern lights?
Mm. That's a good question. When we are in, again, it really depends on the cycle of the moon, but we sometimes, and I will preface this with the word sometimes, have the opportunity in Tasmania when we're staying at Truffle Lodge. The light pollution in that particular area is very, very low, and sometimes we have the opportunity to do some stargazing and astrophotography. Again, the moon phases have a big part to play, but also cloud cover. Uh, I, 6 trips I did through Truffle Lodge last year. I think two of those trips we had great stargazing opportunities. So yes, you could have the potential, but I guess it's a way up. Do you bring the tripod and the camera gear for an opportunity that has a small chance of occurring, or do we try and maximize our gear on things that will most certainly occur? So yes, there is a potential for astrophotography, but it's a very, very narrow opportunity that we would have to have a lot of luck to weave our way through, certainly.
Oh, that's very helpful. Thank you. Okay, next, going on to our next theme here. What about insects? Are they an issue at all throughout the trip?
I find sometimes we can. First of all, I will address something. A lot of people think when they come to Australia, everything wants to kill you. That is a pretty common statement we receive. Some people think our insects, our mosquitoes are like pterodactyls, but needless to say, it's not a huge concern. It is hard for me to say what the insects are going to be like because someone who lives in Australia, maybe I'm just a little bit blasé about it and I don't get too concerned. But in Kangaroo Island, sometimes we encounter some mosquitoes, sometimes some flies as well at different times of year. Uh, the chances of catching a disease from some of these insects is so unbelievably low. It's not a high risk country like other countries that you may explore to, where you feel like you have to take medication to prevent a disease from the insects. It's probably more so they're just a little bit annoying rather than anything. When we do travel, we always make sure that we have insect repellent available to you. Your expedition leader will inform you, hey guys, in this particular area at this type of day, you may encounter some mosquitoes or maybe encounter some flies. These are some of the things that you can do to mitigate that risk. I don't encourage our guests to bring insect repellent as such. We will have that available with us throughout the trip. Maybe if you had a small roll on, you might want to place it into your toiletries amenities bag by all means, but I don't think it's necessary to be bringing a big insect repellent. We will have that stuff available to us. When it comes to clothing, I'd probably be looking at more sun smart items, hence why the long sleeves, opposed to insect safe clothing. I don't think that would be the major concern when it comes to your clothing choices.
That's helpful, very helpful. Going on to hiking opportunities, does NetHab
Mm,
provide trekking poles or hiking sticks or anything like that?
yeah. Great question. If you use hiking sticks on the regular, so at every single opportunity you jump out of the car, you feel like if it's a little bit of uneven terrain, by all means. But some of our local providers will have hiking poles available to us. So in Kangaroo Island, sometimes they have hiking poles available to us. Tasmania, they certainly do. So we try to make sure that if we have walks that require it, they're available to us. But it really depends. If you use hiking poles regularly, by all means, you can bring them with you if they're lightweight and easy to move. When you arrive in Adelaide as well, I think it's important to remember we have, depending on when your arrival time is, you generally have some time to explore Adelaide City. And we place ourselves in a beautiful hotel in the middle of downtown Adelaide. There's a shopping precinct right nearby. So when you do arrive, if you feel like you've left something at home, something small, maybe a hiking pole or maybe a shirt or something similar, and you have second thoughts on your journey across to Australia, this would be a great opportunity for you to obviously purchase supplies. So if you arrive in earlier in the day when we have our welcome presentation that night, that would be an opportunity to explore Adelaide and potentially do some retail therapy by all means, but also purchase some necessity items that you've decided that probably would be helpful along the way.
Yes, coming in early does really have its benefits sometimes. So, continuing on the walking theme here, will there be any night
Mm.
walks to see nocturnal animals?
Mm. That's a really good question. When it comes to night walks, we obviously need to be mindful of the terrain. So safety comes first. As I say to my guests, safety never takes a holiday, even though you guys are. So when it comes to doing a night walk, we do offer it at Truffle Lodge. That's probably the best place to do it. The reason being is at Truffle Lodge, when we're staying right near the Derwent River, sometimes we have some paddy melons, which I'm not going to give away what they are. They're a small little cute guy, and some wallabies, and sometimes even some possums that are found around that area. So when I say possum, our possums are much cuter than the opossums, I must say. But this would be a great opportunity to walk safely along a boardwalk and also a flat grassy area that's obviously not going to be too dangerous to walk on at night time and do some spotlighting with your expedition leader. I find on tours that's probably the most rewarding place to do it for the amount of wildlife and also for the safety of our guests. In Cradle Mountain National Park, when we're staying at our accommodation at Peppers or Cradle Mountain Lodge, just walking between the restaurant and your room, it may be, a few hundred feet. You may encounter multiple wombats and possums along the way. So that would be a great opportunity for you to do some night exploration. I find based on the weather and the wildlife and the suitability of some of the guests, the expedition leader will make decisions and communicate and ask the group when and what they're most excited about and work through the itinerary with their guests and sort of customize it a little bit based on their needs, the weather and the wildlife.
That's great. Switching to the kayak opportunity, are all the
Mm,
kayaks one
mm,
person or are there also doubles?
mm. Yeah, another high quality question. I'm really loving these. The kayaks we generally have we talk to local provider the day before and get the exact numbers, but there is the opportunity to do doubles and the opportunity to do singles. And obviously your expedition leader will jump in to a double as well and assist if needed, or into a single. So there is the opportunity to do single or both. We find a lot of our guests, they'll arrive in Tasmania and they'll say to me, "Hey Matt, we've just done kayaking training for the last 6 months ready for this." And then they get out in the water and say, "Oh, this is too easy. This is nice and smooth." So please, I encourage you to, yes, be prepared that it may be a little bit bumpy in the kayak when you do your journey because we never know what the weather is going to be like. But it is quite a leisurely experience. And you can obviously do this in a double, and you can obviously do it in a single if you prefer to be on your own.
Perfect. Yeah, we have about time for one more question, and I see a theme here that I think all of us would like to get some perspective on. So the big fires that
Yep.
happened a few years ago, could you maybe share with us the update after the big fires, and if people who
Mm,
don't know, if you would want to give a little bit of
mm,
backstory of what happened, and then maybe tell us
yep.
all what the status is after those.
Mm, most certainly. This was an incredibly confronting scene for a lot of people around the world. I think every single person probably watching this has seen an image of a koala with horrific burns. A lot of these images and a lot of this footage that made international media was from Kangaroo Island. There's no denying that. Roughly 40% of the island burnt down during those bushfires. Fire ecology is a massive conversation that we will dive into on the tour and actually would be the fundamental part of your experience in Kangaroo Island. Talking about, well, why did it occur and what kind of revegetation do we have now? In fact, we meet with ecologists that talk to us exactly about the recovery of different species on the ground. But what I can tell you is you will see evidence of bushfires on Kangaroo Island. You will see massive amounts of regrowth. In fact, a lot of the plant species, they thrive in fire. Eucalyptus, we call them sometimes fire trees. They promote fire and they germinate their seeds in fire. So fire is an important part of their livelihood. And Indigenous Australians have been burning off the landscape for tens of thousands of years. So it's not unnatural, but the size of the fires and the close and the proximity to our wildlife, our natural reserves, and our populations was what was really confronting about that. And and the size of the fires, it really did cause quite a destructive environment. We will see evidence of the fire. A lot of the places have recovered. There'll be areas where we'll say, hey, this all burnt down and you wouldn't even know about it. And as for the wildlife numbers, most of our wildlife has recovered. But again, we're going to dive into that topic a little bit deeper. A lot of people around the world were hesitant to explore Australia because they think our entire country burnt down, all of our wildlife is gone. That is absolutely not true. A lot of our wildlife is still quite prevalent. Certain species probably copped it a little bit more than others, but a lot of animals as well are adapted to live in fire. To give you an example, some of our animals would dig burrows and stay underground as the fires passed over. But again, we'll be diving into the topic of fire ecology in great detail in Kangaroo Island, but please be reassured, our natural assets and our wildlife are absolutely restored. They are there and for all to enjoy.
Yes, thank you so much for that reassurance. I'm sure all of us are very happy to hear that. All
Mm.
right, we've already reached the top of the hour. So, everybody, if we did not get to your question today, please reach out to the Adventure Concierge team, or if you still need to book, reach out to your adventure specialist. They'll be more than happy to help you with any questions you have. So, Matt, I would love to turn it to you for any last closing comments.
I guess it's one of the great wildlife destinations of the world. Australia has a huge amount of endemism, a huge amount of endemic species, and it's a place that will capture your heart for many years to come. Um, I'm starting to get a little bit emotional just talking about it. I've been fortunate enough to live in this great nation my entire life, and I've spent a lot of time overseas exploring wildlife as well. And there, for me, there is no place like home. And I think you're going to turn this into your second home. When you arrive here and meet Australians and enjoy our landscapes and our beautiful wildlife, I'm not sure if anyone found the animal in this image, by the way, then I think a piece of your heart will stay here forever. It's a destination that you will never forget. You will want to return to multiple times, and this itinerary and this tour will change your life. It's as simple as that.
Sounds absolutely incredible. Well, Matt, I want to thank you personally for coming on today and giving us a great webinar. And I also want to thank everybody who tuned in. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody.